Let's move to Newspoll. We could be here all night talking about the ABC primary vote today, unchanged. Coalition staying at a 41% to Labor's 36%. 2PP, Labor have lost their very small lead. It's now 50-50. That's two-party preferred. A little bit of movement in the PM's net satisfaction. He's down 11 points since April. So too, though, for Anthony Albanese. He's moved down 6 and he was already pretty low. Slight dent, Dennis, in the PM's personal numbers, but it's a concomitant drop there for Albo. Is this a pox on both their houses, or are people at the moment just sick of wall-to-wall COVID vaccine politicking between the two major parties?
Well, I think that the latter point is probably the case here. Only once in the last 12 months has the Coalition's primary vote moved outside the margin of error in Newspoll. Only once. It recovered. There has been no change. This week, no change in the primary vote for either the Coalition or the Labor Party. The two-party preferred is moving on very small numbers as support changes for either One Nation or the Greens. We're talking about an estimate here based on extremely small sampling sizes. What's more, what we've seen, and you're right, the only real change in this Newspoll was a decline in Scott Morrison's personal standing. But the trouble with this, and this may fit Labor's narrative, whether it's true or not, that they are actually damaging Scott Morrison in Parliament personally because they need to take him down to take down the Coalition. But what we've seen since March is a decline in Anthony Albanese's satisfaction and a rise in his dissatisfaction. So all the time, Labor is attacking Scott Morrison personally and seems to be having a result. There's actually a negative result for Anthony Albanese. This is the big problem. When you take on negative politics, it costs you as much as it costs your target.
Yes, look, I've been there in opposition. You've got to be very careful how you play it. And he doesn't have, much depth in his front bench to take on some of those issues. I think particularly some of the women taking on the Prime Minister over the COVID issue might help spread the load, but it doesn't seem to happen much. I want to go to a story. You and I are both old enough to remember Victorians leaving around the time of the 1990s, the recession, the state bank collapse in Victoria, and many other things. Confirmation today too, they're leaving the state in droves from now. Statistics on the SEEK website show that residents of Melbourne were the top applicants for interstate jobs, up 9% in Adelaide, for example. 12,000 people have left Melbourne this year. The single biggest net migration, Dennis, loss since 2008. Not a lot of faith here in Victoria that this will be our last lockdown number 4. People are thinking there'll be more to come.
Well, I think that it's actually even more grave than just the latest lockdown. I think what we're seeing is the culmination of years of lack of application in the Victorian Health Department, in the management of the public service, in political response, and in parliamentary democracy. And I think that people are starting to say, certainly COVID is the obvious reason why they're getting out. But these people aren't getting out just for a weekend or trying to get away from a lockdown. These are people moving out of Victoria, moving out of Melbourne and setting to get new jobs in Sydney and Adelaide and elsewhere. This is actually going to be a real fundamental change for Victoria. And what was the Victorian government's answer to try and encourage business to stay in Victoria? A new tax in the budget, a new levy. Now, I'm also probably a bit older than you, Peter, and I can remember when Joe Bajelki-Peterson did away with taxes to attract people to Queensland, and it worked a treat. Victoria is putting on taxes to drive people out and also seems to be working a treat. But this is not good for the future of Victoria and the future for the national economy.
You're spot on to remind me about Bajelki-Peterson, because if there was a smart Labor Premier, if that's not an oxymoron, if there was a smart Labor Premier or Liberal Premier out there, Marshall in South Australia, if they were out there courting Victorians to move, particularly businesses bringing jobs into the state, payroll tax exemptions, let's say, I think it would be a huge motivator. Victorians don't need much to leave, but I think that would be a game changer. And that's what's happened in the past. I fear it's going to happen again. Dennis Shanahan, enjoy beautiful Moruya. Wish I was there now and not locked down here.
I just got back from the beach, Peter. It was lovely.